to me why they're there, why they're, actually, they tried to do euphoria, it would be the word. The word is euphoria, where they don't allow their intentions to be known. They try their best to distract away from the obvious question, which is, well, why exactly are you here? Which I asked immediately. I was like, are you guys here to take me to the psych ward? They were like, no, 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 no. And I'm like, I don't feel like you would have a whole police squad with one social worker just to be here to tell me we have this great program for you. No, I don't believe that. But I was already out the door and I didn't understand the situation. And really, no truth, I was too tired to care. The lady was talking to me, and it was clear as day throughout the whole conversation. Like, these people had a very bad assumption of me, a very bad bias, because the way people look at you just says so much without them saying anything. You can use as much rapport as you want, but if your facial expressions and what you're doing, your actions don't line up, well, what are you really doing? Other than trying your best to lie, but your body's just not lining up with what you're saying, and thus it just becomes more and more obvious. I mean, the lady, even the social worker who wasn't a police officer, even tried to make it seem like as if I was being overly aggressive with her. No, I was just tired and very depressed about a lot of things. Like the fact I had to kick my own little sister out just because, well, she was a detriment to my apartment, and I had to kick the other guy out because he was a problem for the safety of my pets, and he didn't clean up, and he, didn't pay rent. He forgot to pay rent. And I'm like, okay, you need to, And yes, he was a week, but I told him because it was the tail end of the month, I was like, you just got to pay for that 1 week. And then the next month, you're good. Because he's not my family. And I'm like, you're going to stay here. You got to pay. You can't just stay here. And it was a week, and the man was surprised that I told him, well, where's the week rent? I have to pay rent. Like, when you're moving with someone, don't you got to think of the reasons why you're moving with them? I'm sorry this video is long. I've noticed it like 9 minutes at this point. I might try and cut it down into parts, so make it a little easier. But basically, aside from the roommate, no matter what I said to the social worker or police, because the social worker was making it seem like I had some kind of offer being presented to me. Basically, they were going to do some kind of visitation thing where they would come visit, check on my well-being and everything. And I was like, okay, you're offering that, but I asked the most obvious question, which was, well, how much does it cost? And she's talking about discounts and stuff, and I'm just like, I'm told about discounts often. I don't ever seem to be qualified for them, so I was like, no. I was like, I've already having financial problems. Why are you ought to offer me a program that I clearly would not want because it's just taking money out of my wallet, which is diabolical. But I made it very clear, I'm only worried about my finances. That's literally it. And the whole idea is that this is supposed to be a wellness check. This is supposed to be them seeing how well I am. And if it's finances, well, that's a very common problem, I would think. It doesn't matter how much you're making. There's a certain point where like the average, as far as I remember, the average income that's considered average is like $5,000 a month. I may be fully disabled, but I'm still under $1,000 on that one. And when you're recovering from a lot of stuff that I had to recover from, like, no, you don't make the best decisions, and often enough you make a lot of mistakes. But that's the idea of life. You ought to learn, not because there's an authority figure ready to punish you, but because learning helps you proceed faster, or at the very least with a lot less friction, or just a lot less friction, because friction requires more effort to do anything. When there's too much friction, you need too much energy to just make something move. So as you go through life and you start smoothing things out a bit more of yourself, you start realizing I can reduce a lot of my friction if I just do this. You're the pilot of your life. You're the captain of your seat. You know how to fix yourself better than anybody else does. And that's kind of one of the things I always promote with medical stuff, is more promoting yourself, advocating for yourself. That's always a big thing. And honestly, just because you can advocate does not mean that the doctor cares to hear it. Even if it does come down to mental health, which medical science is very, very far along these days. There's so much stuff that they've understood about the human body and everything that is great. But when it comes down to mental health, it's a whole different ballgame because a lot of it requires the patient to be open enough to tell. So a lot of it requires the doctor to listen more than just immediately diagnose and not think about it, which is a big thing that happened in the psych ward I was at. Poplar Springs, terrible psych ward they took me to. Oh yeah, obviously, when it came down to the wellness check, no matter what I said, they put handcuffs on me and brought me over to the general hospital of my location. And basically, I had to sit in there for 10 hours while being called smelly, being called a child, being questioned about things, but having no ability to question things myself. So obviously, they didn't tell me the reasoning of why I was there. But sister popped up in the conversation, and I never brought up my sister whatsoever throughout the whole thing. So that's why that was the first clue for me that this wasn't about me. This wasn't about my mental health. They could care less about that. Doesn't matter. Like everything I said, it was funny because if you look on the documentation, which you can't because certain things about the police, which I learned when I did an investigation after all this, you cannot look into, especially when it comes down to the reasoning of doing a wellness check. As I learned from the investigator who did look into it, as you may have seen, I'm going to split this in two parts. In part one, where you see the investigation results, which don't tell you that much. All it does is make it look like as if I denied something for no reason. But in actuality, it's like there was no choice, because if I deny, I just get handcuffs on me anyway. If I approve, I lose money, which is counterproductive to what I'm trying to do. So I was like, yeah, this is just ridiculous, and I'm going to fight this because you're not going to just force me to, spend money on something I feel like isn't necessary right now, isn't required of me at this very moment. But you're saying it is, and if I say no, I get handcuffs on me. I guess my rights are, well, just on a piece of paper. They don't exist outside of that piece of paper. Now, your authority, because you have the uniform, now that exists because you're wearing it. I mean, that's it. I guess if I was wearing Marine Corps uniform, it wouldn't be so funny to do all that to them, but I'm a veteran. Don't have much push, don't have much authority, don't have many people who can help me out around this time. Back in Marine Corps, I used to know dudes who'd be like, oh yeah, why are you doing that to him? Get away from that guy. Like, why are you messing with this guy? It's like, I had to know people who could help me when people would come in and try to mess with me. Because it's just something you get used to in your life, is that no matter what you do, someone hates you very deeply, and you may have never said a word to them, but they hate you anyway. I had people who bold-faced told me they hated me. I had people, again, and it didn't matter what uniform they wore. I don't like people. I don't want people touching me ever again. I don't want people getting close to me ever again. I'd rather stay with my animals. I'd rather stay alone. I don't want your help. I want you to leave me alone. Eternia out.